He lied about a $1 stock, made millions, and served barely 2 years in prison. Years later, Hollywood turned his crimes into entertainment. Crowds laughed, tickets sold out, and the man at the center of it all became famous again. This is not the movie version. This is the story as it actually unfolded, step by step. Jordan Belfort was born in 1962 in Bayside, Queens, a working-class Jewish neighborhood where ambition usually stopped at stability. Good job, decent house, predictable life. But Jordan was wired differently. He wasn't interested in comfort. He was interested in winning. As a teenager, he discovered something early. People were easy to convince. One summer, he sold Italian ices on the beach, not by working harder than anyone else, but by turning every customer into a salesman. 2 for 1 if you tell 3 friends. By the end of the season, he'd made more money than most adults around him. At 16, instead of spending it, he made a different decision. He enrolled in dental school, not because he wanted to fix teeth, but because he thought it might lead to wealth. That illusion shattered on the very first day. The dean stood in front of the class and made one thing clear. If you're here to get rich, you're in the wrong profession. Jordan didn't argue. He didn't complain. He stood up, walked out, and never came back. For him, this wasn't failure. It was course correction. After college, he tried something completely different. Door-to-door meat and seafood sales. It was chaotic, unorganized, and surprisingly profitable. He sold steaks out of the back of his car, closed deals in living rooms, promised quality, speed, and price, whether he could deliver or not. For a while, the money poured in, 6 figures a month in revenue. But the business was built on improvisation, not structure. Deliveries failed, inventory spoiled, invoices piled up. Within months, it collapsed. Most people would have learned a lesson about sustainability. Jordan learned something else. The product didn't matter. The sale did. Whether it was meat, ice cream, or something else entirely, if you could control the conversation, you could control the outcome. He didn't need a better product. He needed a bigger stage. That stage was Wall Street. In the late 1980s, Jordan landed an entry-level job at a brokerage firm. It was legitimate on paper. Suits, phones, quotas. But it was also the era of excess. Cocaine in bathrooms, money moving fast, and brokers who believed confidence mattered more than truth. For the first time, Jordan saw what real money looked like, and more importantly, how it was made. He wasn't impressed by charts or analysis. He was fascinated by the pitches, the tone, the certainty. Then came October 1987, Black Monday. Markets collapsed. Phones went silent. Brokers stared at screens in disbelief. Jordan lost his job, but while others panicked, he noticed something. Not everything had fallen apart. There was still a corner of the market nobody respected: penny stocks, low-priced shares, thin oversight, ignored by serious institutions. To most brokers, they were trash. To Jordan, they were gold, because penny stocks paid massive commissions, sometimes 50% per trade. Same pitch, same phone, 10 times the reward, no degrees required, no deep analysis, just conviction. Jordan picked up the phone and started calling strangers across America, people who had never heard of him, people who trusted the authority in his voice. He promised them opportunity, urgency, a chance to get in early. They didn't need to understand the company. They just needed to believe they were ahead of the crowd. And it worked. Call after call, money moved. Jordan had found his kingdom. By 1989, he wasn't alone anymore. He partnered with Danny Porish, a fast-talking, reckless closer with raw instinct. Together, they built something new: Stratton Oakmont. The name sounded old money, respectable, established. The reality was very different. It operated out of a strip mall, cheap desks, flickering lights, no legacy, no restraint. Jordan didn't hire analysts. He hired hunger, bartenders, dropouts, people who wanted money now. He didn't want thinkers. He wanted voices. And then came the training. Not about finance, about pressure, about never letting doubt breathe, about turning hesitation into submission. This wasn't investing. It was sales warfare. and Stratton Oakmont was just getting started. The first crack didn't come from the outside. It came from inside the room. Stratton Oakmont had grown too loud, too reckless, too visible. The same chaos that once felt like freedom now felt dangerous. People were making money, but they were also making enemies. Former employees started talking, not because they suddenly found morals, but because pressure changes priorities. Some were angry. Some were scared. Some simply wanted protection. And when people start talking, investigators start listening. The FBI didn't storm in immediately. They never do. They watched. They pulled phone records. They reviewed cold call scripts. They traced patterns in trades that didn't make sense. Stocks that spiked on hype and collapsed right after insiders exited. They followed the money. What they found didn't add up. Reported income couldn't explain the homes, the cars, the yacht, the cash withdrawals. Money was moving offshore, through shell companies, through accounts under other people's names, each transfer adding distance between the source and accountability. Jordan still believed he was ahead. That complexity meant safety. That speed meant control. But complexity leaves trails, and speed creates mistakes. In 1996, the walls finally closed in. Federal agents raided Stratton Oakmont. Phones were seized, files were taken, hard drives copied. Some employees panicked. Some tried to destroy documents. Others tried to walk out with briefcases full of shredded paper. It didn't matter. The investigation had already gone further than most people inside the firm realized. Jordan was warned, explicitly told not to move money. He did it anyway. A multi-million-dollar transfer overseas, recorded, tracked, undeniable. That single move turned suspicion into certainty. The chase was over. Facing decades in prison, Jordan made the same decision he had always made under pressure. He sold. This time, he wasn't selling stocks. He was selling information. He cooperated. He wore a wire. He recorded conversations. He named names. People who once celebrated him were suddenly liabilities. One by one, they fell. More than 30 employees were charged. Some served longer sentences than the man who built the system. Jordan received 22 months in a minimum security prison. No bars, no violent offenders, mornings on the tennis court, afternoons lifting weights. For many victims, the punishment felt unreal. They had lost retirement funds, college savings, entire futures, and he was already planning his comeback. While inside, Jordan began writing. Not an apology, not a confession, a story filled with excess, bravado, and punchlines, a story that made fraud entertaining. When the book was published, it sold. Then Hollywood came calling. In 2013, the world watched as Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio turned that story into a spectacle. The audience laughed. Critics applauded. The scams became scenes. The victims became background. Jordan Belfort was no longer a cautionary tale. He was a pop culture icon. But the people he scammed didn't get book deals. They didn't get movie adaptations, a teacher who lost her pension, a veteran who invested his life savings, families who believed a confident voice on the phone. They were left with debt and silence. A court ordered Jordan to pay over $100 million in restitution. Only a fraction was ever recovered. The rest disappeared into legal structures, delays, and loopholes. Today, Jordan Belfort is free. He speaks on stages, hosts podcasts, sells motivation, teaches sales and ethics. He wears the name Wolf like a brand. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. Not that the system failed once, but that it rewarded the same skills twice, the same confidence, the same control, the same ability to sell a story. Because deep down, this wasn't just about one man. It was about a culture that mistakes confidence for truth, speed for intelligence, and success for virtue. Jordan Belfort didn't escape the system. He mastered it. And the real lesson isn't that he got away with it. The lesson is that the system is still here, waiting for the next confident voice to pick up the phone and promise certainty in an uncertain world. In the end, this story was never really about stocks. It was about belief. belief in confident voices, belief in shortcuts, belief that someone else had already done the thinking for you. Jordan Belfort didn't invent greed. He didn't invent fraud. He simply understood how easily people confuse confidence with truth, and how rarely systems punish those who exploit that confusion well. The real damage wasn't measured in dollars alone. It was measured in trust, in people who did everything right, followed the rules, and still lost everything to a voice on the other end of the phone. And the most uncomfortable truth is this: the world didn't reject Jordan Belfort. It rewarded him. First with money, then with fame, then with applause. Because deep down, we don't just watch stories like this to feel outraged. We watch them because a part of us wonders what it would feel like to win the same way. That's why this story still matters. Not because it happened, but because it can happen again. Different market, different product, same psychology. The next scam won't announce itself as a scam. It will sound confident. It will feel urgent. And it will promise certainty in a world that has very little of it. And the only real protection is remembering this. When someone pushes you to act fast, to stop asking questions, to trust their confidence over your understanding, they're not selling opportunities. They're selling control. And that's how the wolf really won.